Good morning, Crow.
Good morning, Randall. How are you today?
Excellent. It's raining in California nonstop, so I got showered on my way coming out of my car.
Tell you, you people can't be made happy. There's no water. There's too much water.
I
There's
know,
too much
right?
fire. I don't know what's up with you guys.
It's true. It's true.
It's actually gonna be sunny here today and not terrible, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, maybe I'll go outside.
Our mountains got so filled with snow that the chairlifts can't even be seen anymore.
Really?
Yeah, Mammoth Mountain, Big Bear are both so filled up you can't use the chairlifts anymore.
Huh. Crazy.
And we have two more storms coming next week.
Really?
Yeah.
There's very little weather inside my house, so I frequently get to experience it. We'll give it maybe till like 5 after and go from there. So if you want to get coffee or some water or whatever.
Cool. Will do.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey,
Hey.
what is up? Aside from you.
The ceiling? How about you? Oh, that's fantastic.
Good one, Craig.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll just give it another minute or so to see if folks roll in. Here's our agenda for such that it is.
Did we ever get final approval?
Well, today in the TAC, we are going to try to attempt to capture an official vote to express endorsement of the plan for the governance committee.
Woohoo.
Yeah, my track record with votes so far is oh and many. We'll see. Today's a new day. I'm optimistic. Maybe we'll actually make something happen.
Well, I'm always available to help push buttons.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Either the good ones or the bad ones. It doesn't matter.
I did submit that talk probe, the blatant sales pitch for OSS-SIRT to something OpenSSF Day.
Nice.
So, in case it's still in the air by then and I get accepted, I will. I was very, very clear in my proposal that it was a blatant pitch. So, anyway.
Well, it could just be a kind of a theater of the mind session. This is what could have happened.
Oh, sure.
We're not going to do any of this, but it could have happened.
Lots of angles to take. Yeah.
All right. Well, I had posted a link in many of the Slack channels last week. There is the Open Source Security Summit in Europe coming up. There, the call for papers is open. If anyone is interested in submitting talks there, I know we haven't even gotten to North America yet, but got a plan. I'll toss a couple things over there and see what happens.
I was gonna say, Europe usually has a pretty strong security presence, especially the past couple of years. I've been rather impressed with the turnout.
I really enjoyed my time in Dublin last year. Good conference, great participation. But some of us are on tight budgets, so that isn't necessarily in the cards. We'll see.
Yeah.
We shall see. So let us start. Do we want to work on the questionnaire today? Or did we have a topic we wanted to collaborate on to keep us moving forward whilst the bureaucracy grinds forward?
What was the questionnaire? I think that sounds like a good place to get started.
So we had two types of constituents we wanted to approach in the plan. The first was upstream projects and maintainers. Hey, what types of services would you enjoy from the SIRT? And then there was another set of constituents, actual active security teams, kind of going out and talking to them to try to learn from them what has worked, what hasn't worked, so that we can potentially refine our tactics. Either of those types of folks sound like an interesting thing to talk about?
Yeah. If we focus on the last one, did Vincent Donnan ever give us any feedback from his experience working on a CERT?
My old peer and old boss has not yet submitted any feedback.
Okay. Wonder if it's worthwhile to send out a request to the governing board for contacts with their certs. That way we can send them an exclusive survey on that and collect it directly from them instead of the opposite where we request it and they eventually provide us the response.
I think that is a good tactic. Let me find my notes. Too damn many tabs open. And most of them are OpenSSF, Google Docs, or GitHub repos. So what types of questions would we ask a member CERT with their experiences with open source? What's worked, what hasn't worked?
I don't know that we need the experience with open source necessarily. I think we can certainly ask for it, but I think highly mature and robust organizations that have a SOC or a security incident response team that's been operational for a while, there's probably some value in understanding how some of that affects large scale organizations and even small businesses, particularly where you have communication breakdowns or organizational silos. Some of the challenges that they experienced in getting information out there is also useful in open source because not all maintainers talk to us and we don't know where they all are. So I think maybe asking it from a perspective of a postmortem around like, what are your current processes? What worked and what didn't? What were some of the potential pitfalls when your CERT program was set up? Or what changes would you like to see made to your CERT program if you had all the time and energy in the world?
I think those are all great questions. And I just realized we have an opportunity. Next Thursday is the monthly meeting of the first PSIRT SIG. So if we had our questions, I could pop in there and say, hey, friends, we would love to collect some information from you and kind of ask those groups.
That's a good one.
And while they aren't all members of the foundation, they are all working security teams.
Okay. So let's crank out some questions then.
Yeah.
Who's got a good postmortem framework?
I have some questions generated, but I've had a very busy couple of weeks, so I haven't been able to put them on a Google Doc, but I can send those. Some of the stuff that you mentioned, Emily, was covered in that.
Do you have it accessible? You can read it out loud and we can convert it into a Google Doc.
I'm working on that right now.
Okay.
You need to install a laptop in your car.
I know.
That's what voice to text is for, right?
Now it's not just not waking up everyone in the house. I'm trying not to wake up. My dog went blind over the last couple of weeks. I'm trying not to wake up the blind dog. Because then she starts with like, I want to be next to you all day, every day. And it's like, yeah.
And then we also have the TAC meeting where we will be voting again on whether the plan is a good idea. And that'll go back to the governance committee, which will be on Thursday, I believe. So again, if we get the questions done.
Okay, I could read off my questions. My first one was, what's the most common type of incident response your project has experienced in the past? Number 2 is, how do you currently handle incident?
Easy.
Next.
Okay. Thank you.
How do you currently handle security incidents within your project? Do you have a dedicated team or is it managed ad hoc?
Okay, next.
What are the main challenges you face when managing open source security in your open source projects?
Okay.
Are you ready for the next one?
Yep.
How would you describe the level of expertise security issues amongst your project contributors and maintainers?
Okay.
What are your expectations for an external SIRT team in terms of support? Ready for the next one?
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. Okay. What are your expectations for an external SIRT team in terms of support, communication, and response time?
Okay. Next.
Which communication channels and tools do you currently use to report, discuss, and track issues in your project? Security issues. Sorry, to track security issues in your project.
Okay. Thanks very much. See you.
Okay, next.
Would you be interested in receiving security updates and best practices from a SIRT team to improve the overall security posture of your project?
How about, do you already, or would you?
Yeah, some of these can be reworded because remember that I was working with ChatGPT and a lot of this. That's why this is like worded way better than I would.
That was best practices, techniques, and what else?
I had just best practices and a security update, regular security updates, which I wasn't super happy about, but I just kind of copy and pasted it.
Okay.
Because I don't really know what regular security updates means, but yeah.
Yeah, it might just be an informational notice of a consolidated data feed for that content.
Yeah, obviously it'd be something we have to establish. Ready for the next one?
And thinking about traditional vendors, Randall, we do publish security updates on a regular cadence, unlike upstream, which is whenever it's ready, it goes out the door.
Yeah. Or when somebody remembers.
Yeah. And that's probably what the robot was referring to.
All right. What's next?
Are there any specific security vulnerabilities or risks that you are particularly concerned about in your project?
Okay.
In what areas do you think an external SIRT would provide the most value to your project, e.g., vulnerability assessment, patch development, incident response, or threat intelligence?
The threat intel stuff is like, we're bleeding into a totally different category of work. So that one's interesting. So I'm going to leave that one open and then we can fill that in later. All right, what's next?
How do you currently prioritize or categorize security incidents? And would you be open to adopting a standardized approach provided by the SIRT?
Next.
Do you have any policies, procedures, or guidelines in place for dealing with security incidents? And if so, would you be willing to share them with the CERT?
Okay.
What level of collaboration and information sharing would you be comfortable with between your project and the CERT?
Okay.
This next one is whatever. What are the most important qualities and skills that you would expect from the members of an external CERT team? I can see someone writing in, just make it go away.
Yeah, I can totally see that one too. What's next?
How can the CERT best align with your project development lifecycle to minimize disruption while addressing security issues effectively? I have one more.
Okay. Go ahead.
Are you willing to designate a point of contact within your project team to collaborate with the CERT and facilitate communications? And those are the 15 that I had generated.
Okay.
For that.
Okay.
Thank you for describing for us, Emily.
Yeah, not a
Super
problem.
helpful.
Okay. So there's a lot of stuff to unpack here, and it sounds like ChatGPT was super chatty.
And this is ChatGPT 4.
Probably gets paid by the character.
That's what it is. The more text that they provide, the more ads they can sell you and make money off of. Okay, so the most common type of incident experience in the past, I think that's one that we can certainly ask of an organization as well as an open source project. The organization levels will have different ones, and I think it would be beneficial for us to provide a short list of what kinds of incidents that we would be interested in.
Fair.
Agreed.
So we'll need to come up with that. How do you currently handle incidents, manage them ad hoc or with a dedicated team? That's more around the group of individuals that are responsible for it. So whether or not they're surging from different parts of the organization. But I think this question can probably be broken down even further. Like, do you have an SOP? Like how detailed is it? Or is it more like you talk to Bob and he just shows up magically and fixes things?
That.
I would hate to say that I actually think this question will be mostly ad hoc.
For open source, very like
open source.
Yes.
It also depends on which projects you talk to, because Kubernetes has their own.
Correct.
There's a few different of the larger, highly mature open source projects that will have their own, or foundations that do this. When you talk about enterprises, it depends on what kinds of incidents we're referring to. If we're talking about software specific incidents, that is probably going to look entirely different than internal facing incidents, such as like insider threat kind of activities and how they manage those kinds of things. But that's all valuable information for us to consider, because if there's an account takeover in an open source project, that you can basically apply an insider threat kind of mentality to what they would be able to have access to, and how do you shake that turnover. So there's a lot of different pieces there.
And
fair point.
Depending on who answers what part of the organization, we're going to get different answers if they're part of the corporate security team or part of the product security team for an enterprise.
Yeah.
I just know that a lot of my time spent in like the JS framework realm, they all really don't care about security. I mean, they're not going to admit to that, but it's the truth. Like, no one has a security team. Like, yeah, it's a mess. And the response is, well, they don't do it, so why don't we have to do it? If like they don't do it, it gets complicated.
Would it be worthwhile to ask them how many people are involved in an average incident?
You want to know something? It was even difficult to get an answer for David Wheeler's question. That's kind of why I wanted that question in here about like how many people legitimately know about the security of the project, because even huge projects, just a huge project, does not name any specific projects, but like you would get, well, there might be this one guy that I would consider him pretty prepped up. That was the pretty common answer. And I mean, we're talking about big framework projects that like have like tens of thousands of users at the very minimum.
No, and it really depends on that community's goals. Are they just solving a quick problem and moving on, or are they legitimately there to be part of something like Kubernetes and build a whole ecosystem? They're going to have different motivations, and
I mean, some of those
legitimately is not a concern for a college student doing their dissertation, you know?
Mm-hmm. It's true, but I mean, some of those frameworks, Crobe, I would say are Kubernetes level, because we're talking like the React realm of like JavaScript frameworks. They're big boys. It's not. I thought it was a very inappropriate answer that when I went around to some of these projects last year, offering to help them with their badges and whatnot, they were like, "Oh, we're not interested because they're not doing it, so we're not going to do it. So we don't need best practices."
What's the benefit to the maintainers, the developers, and the community? You know, how can somebody else is benefiting by having these things? You know, what's the benefit to them for the extra work?
Right. I mean, they're not wrong, but as I said, I was offering to help because I was helping one of the frameworks. But as I said, it was difficult when it wouldn't be considered simply because another project that was bigger than them doesn't do secure SIRT team or doesn't have a security team even, then basically it's just a non-starter for a lot of projects. It doesn't really matter what the reasoning is. It's just that our bigger brother doesn't do it, so we're not going to do it.
Okay. So main challenges you have in managing whatever the security of the thing is. I broke out some options there. Is it intake, communication, prioritization? Is it the fix, remediation, and mitigation? Is it notifying impacted users to upgrade, or is it conducting a postmortem? I bet you most people don't even do the postmortem part of it. Let's see here. How would you describe the level of expertise for security issues and challenges amongst your members, contributors, and employees? So that one, there's a few different ways that we can break down level of expertise or expertise areas.
Agreed.
All right. So I threw in early, mid, and senior career, and then expert in the specific technology, a generalized expert in infrastructure, or a language specific expert, depending on what it is that they're looking for. I'm sure there's other categories of things we can lump in there, but that one should be a checkbox question if you're going to ask it, so they can select multiple. What are your expectations for an external CERT team in respect to support, communication, and response time? This one, I think we need to be more specific and probably break down more, because there have been a wide variety of ways in which various nations have attempted to provide centralized response reporting for incidents. And there is a lot of legislation currently and in flight around when you report incidents as they occur. So this one I think is a very complex question to be asking, because there are some organizations and projects that are not interested in an external CERT at all, and then there are some of them that definitely are. And some of them have an expectation probably that an external security incident response team is going to do more coordination activities with federal or even state level institutions. So we needed kind of maybe set the stage of like describing would your ideal external CERT behave like this or like this or like this?
And perhaps we consider changing the question to be, what types of capabilities or services would you benefit from an external CERT focused on open source, instead of kind of jumping into the SLA
Yeah.
and the reporting? What gaps could this organization help fill for you? As I agree, when you get into the international legislation, that's a sticky and contentious thing, as Mr. Mannion can attest to.
Okay. Acknowledge.
I think Krub calling them out as two separate questions. So capabilities and then gaps with the existing certs. What communication channels and tools do you use to track security issues? This one probably needs more definition, because I can see security issues being defined as more than just vulnerabilities.
I was basically getting to,
Go ahead.
do you use GitHub advisories? That was my question. But
Well, how do you get information about your components dependencies for vulnerabilities? Yeah, exactly. Is it lists? Is it a blog? Is it a GitHub advisory? Is it scanner? Is there a legitimate news feed like the security lists or GSD?
by the way, just
I
throwing
imagine
this
in my
out.
experience is a lot of enterprises don't get information. They don't have an information feed. They rely on their commercial tooling, like a Sonatype or a Sneak or a Coverity, to try to identify some of these problems. So they're getting it very late in their life cycles, as opposed to potentially going upstream and getting things from the source.
Yeah.
I was gonna say real quick that I read a report that apparently this year a lot of people have been exploiting the time between the disclosure of a vulnerability and patching vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Not to like be throwing fingers. I'm just saying from a generalization standpoint, I think the usage has doubled from 2022 already.
Yeah, the Verizon report normally talks about that kind of mean time to patch from notification. And that's normally at like a PSERT, that's a metric that they track typically, is time from notification to time till patch.
Right.
That's what we used to do.
I'm not. Do we want to ask straight up? Do you use any of the following tools, systems, services, and throw in, 10 or 12 things that are pretty common or we know about or are in the OpenSSF sort of domain, just checkbox stuff? Yes, no.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that's good survey technique, but.
Well,
like, please go ahead.
I was going to say, we have some of that. There's like the general stuff in our listing here, and then there's the more specific things. I don't know necessarily that we need to know a particular product or vendor commercial tooling that they're leveraging or an open source equivalent, but at least getting the different categories of things. And I do think the checkbox is the right way to go. So right now we've got email list, dependency graph, vulnerability feeds, descriptions, GitHub advisories, commercial tooling, all open source equivalent, security audits, community members, and then list some common things.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm
Sounds
sorry.
good to me.
Phone only. It's probably sounds reasonable.
Okay. The next one is, do you already or would you be interested in learning more about best practices, techniques, security updates, advisories relevant to your group, product, project? I added in a caveat here around akin to a newsletter like this week in SIRT news. It might be good to categorize these in another like checkbox equivalent of like, do you want an email with best practices and techniques, or are you looking for like a web page that you can hit on occasion? So something that's either push information out or make the information available to people to come to you.
Mm-hmm. I know that we also talked about being educational, so I was also kind of feeding that to it.
Yep. Okay. Specific vulns or risks you are concerned about in your project or project. If we're asking a bunch of open source projects or contributors that don't have any previous exposure to security, this will be very difficult for them to answer because they may not know what risks they should be concerned with. We can precede answers to that one. However, if we do that, we're going to be shooting ourselves in the foot for like what kinds of responses we could potentially get. There's the balance between, are you concerned about somebody taking over your GitHub account? Like that's one thing. Are you concerned about not being available to respond to security incidents because you're the only person on your alias? And then you have the more common things of like, oh, somebody finds a memory leak or somebody has a remote code execution.
Somebody dumps a fuzzing report that has 8,000 entries in it.
Yeah, dump and runs. Those are great. So like there's all of those things. So I think it's a good question to ask, but I think we need to have we can either break it down even further into the two different categories of like you managing a project as a human. What concerns do you have about a security risk coming to you or being presented? And we asked that question in the maintainer workshop not too long ago. So I think
workshop.
Yeah, we have some good kind of key indicators there. But so maybe flipping it a little bit more on the vulnerability side and focusing a little bit more intently there would be beneficial. What do others think? Breaking it apart.
Hawa at GitHub did a bunch of research into this.
Which part, Jonathan?
Asking questions of maintainers.
Okay.
Like she already did. So there's a blog post that GitHub put up. I'll post it. I don't know which group is this again. which
this is the OSS-SIRT.
Okay. Is there a Slack channel dedicated to this?
There is Stream 5 incident response.
I will post the link to Hawa's research there, or also in the chat to Zoom. Just give me a second.
Jonathan, you've been added to the channel.
Whoop, whoop. I don't have Slack channels at the top of our agendas. I guess I'll have to fix that someday.
So what I'm going to do for this one is probably break up into two areas after pulling the GitHub blog. Jonathan is going to share with us. And getting the themes from the maintainer workshop. What areas do you think an external CERT would provide value to you or your project? This is kind of
have that, yeah.
related. Okay, related to previous.
Let's see which one. It was kind of the one.
Probably some cleanup needs to happen. Thanks, Jonathan, for posting that.
Thank you.
Let me embed this in the notes. Cool, got it. How do you currently prioritize or categorize security incidents? Would you be open to adopting an approach or a framework recommended by the CERT? This one would probably be beneficial to list a few of them, because there's categorization of vulnerabilities and the criticality of vulnerabilities. And then there's the prioritization of fixing specific vulnerabilities, which may vary. Some people don't like CVSS scores. They like other kinds of scoring mechanisms. And then there's actually categorizing security incidents into different like constructs, whether or not it's a design flaw that caused a particular compromise to occur. It may not necessarily be a vulnerability. It could be a misconfiguration of the project or a GitHub setting misconfiguration. So there's a lot of different things there that would be beneficial to call out for folks, so they're not just narrowly thinking about the vulnerabilities and CVSS scores.
And this is kind of like I changed it to numbers. It's kind of like number 9. Maybe we can merge the two.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and
See,
then
robot pad and its numbers.
yeah, see, merge with number 9, and then so this, in my mind, I see this very similar to like the CVE versus CWE argument.
Yep.
Okay. Do you have any policies, procedures, or guidelines for dealing with or managing incidents? Can these be shared with the CERT related to 3 and 4? Yep.
Yeah, so we're asking like about details about the team and kind of what blah blah blah, what their challenges, kind of intake communication. So we probably should move this one up next to that when we do the survey, so they're kind of grouped.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
What level of collaboration and information sharing would you be comfortable with sharing between the project and the CERT?
We probably should ask that before 12.
Yeah.
Give me your policies. Hey, can you mind sharing?
Well, so I think this is an interesting one to ask, because there are some projects that are very responsive to adopters that come to them with questions about like, hey, I found this security flaw, or I found this issue. Can you fix it? And some projects will ask for log information from their adopters to be able to help diagnose it. I think this one could probably be expanded with what kinds of information do you request from somebody that's reporting an incident? Mm-hmm. What kinds of information do you need to help diagnose one?
Yeah, I like that. Which, as part of the vuln disclosure CVD guides, we talk about, as a maintainer, here's the types of things that'll help you dig into an incident. And then for researchers, we said, if you could provide these items, that will help speed your report along.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be good to hear right from the security team's mouth.
I posted the links, by the way, in both the chat and the place.
Thank you, sir.
It's already linked in the meeting notes doc. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm just on my phone, so I can't anything.
What are the most important qualities and skills you would expect from a CERT team? feel like we asked something similar. Level of expertise and expertise areas. So number 5, those ones can be merged.
Yeah.
Merge with 5. How can the CERT best align with your project's SDLC to minimize disruption and minimize security issues effectively? Alignment questions are usually tricky for most engineers to be able to answer. How can we rephrase this one? Particularly if we don't have like, here's what the CERT does, and here's your project as 2 pictures, overlay them and see where the colors match up.
That's a good point.
Would it be beneficial to ask them to describe their SDLC and identify areas where a CERT could assist or engage?
That works. That sounds good. I think.
Okay. And then are you willing to provide a point of contact to serve as an advocate for the CERT and collaborate with them? Advocate to the CERT. I think that one's pretty straightforward. Okay.
I specifically added that one in there.
I think this is a good starting list. So the question is, out of the themes and questions that we are already asking here, what's missing that would be beneficial for us to be able to stand up a CERT? The only thing that I can see that we're missing is if we are planning on sharing this with existing company certs and trying to get some of this information out of them, maybe asking them for a time when an incident did not go well from a resolution. That's really tricky to get out of teams, particularly given the sensitive nature of most incidents.
I have also some discarded questions if you want me to go through the ones that I thought I needed to either work on or come back to.
Okay.
If you want to just like, because I have one, like, for example, like about project size and does that impact your ability of responding to security incidents? Stuff like that I thought was starting to get into a little bit more details, but I didn't know if we really wanted them. The actual question is, what is the size and structure of your project team and how does it impact your ability to respond to security incidents?
We can actually add that after number 3, number of people that respond or manage a security incident, because we have different groups. You can ask a follow-on question of, do you feel like that's the right size for the kinds of incidents that you work with?
Yeah. And then I have another one. Let's see, out of these, which is good. How do you currently assess the impact of a security incident on your project and its users?
That goes down to prioritization and categorization. And how do you currently prioritize or categorize security incidents? Would you be open to adopting an approach or framework? So that one should be broken out into 2 questions. How do you currently prioritize them? And then would you be willing to adopt something?
Here's one that's kind of strange that
And
might
that
be funny
merges.
to
Go ahead.
add because it's actually very useful. Are there any specific time zone or working hours that the CERT should consider to better support your project?
Star. Well, and then that's going to be a challenge no matter what, because projects live everywhere, companies live everywhere. We may want to maybe shift it to how can we make asynchronous communication better? I don't know.
Out of curiosity, is the original plan of this CERT to be available for all open source projects, or targeted originally at like the top 10 or top 100 critical open source projects, and like reach out to them and say, hey, we are a CERT, we are here for you because you are critical? Like, who is the target initially?
Well, we are still defining that.
So I was going to say, so originally the list of services that were going to be provided would be lightweight introductory services, primarily focused around coordination and communication, and that's open to everyone, as well as some educational aspects of it. So trying to teach everyone to fish where we can instead of just doing the fishing for them. We've also talked about advocating for a framework where projects can establish their own local CERT, and then foundations that have projects within them would have their foundation level CERT, and then this one would sit outside and above all of that as like the CERT of last resort was one of the terms that we threw around a while ago.
It's an interesting question, though, because it sort of echoes the Alpha Omega project in that do you go after the largest short list of largest problems, or do you try and improve the largest number of projects in a basic way?
And historically, this community is super distrustful and does not invite outsiders in. So it's going to take us time to earn trust. So I think initially we probably wouldn't turn many people away, but at some point we will need to, and we have it in the plan that we need to decide kind of what the bug bar, so to speak, is of how and who we can help. But yeah, it's definitely something we need to solve at some point, Jeffrey.
Emily, I have 3 questions that I think might be of interest.
Okay.
What kind of training or resources or support would you expect from the CERT to help your team improve its incident response capabilities? And I think, yeah.
That one goes alongside services. I know we had a question about services. Hold on.
Good.
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand. Maybe I feel like I've joined late and also have missed some context here. So please forgive me.
About a year's worth.
Yeah, fair. I think I see a CERT, right, as an incident response tool to deal with only like coming in for incident response. So those are very sporadic and sort of incidental sort of events. With training and education, that seems like a longer term relationship. The use case for a CERT that I was thinking about is like the resources being available in an emergency to all. Is that the idea? Yes. Or yeah.
So if you go to our repo, let me find it. There's a few different areas that we talked about within the execution and the core services function. Actually, so it's under 2.0. Let me copy and paste this into chat so you have access to it. So this was kind of an initial step at defining what that looks like. We didn't want to immediately exclude the ability to provide responses to teams that need help, but focus on it from the perspective of people are not likely going to come to us first without establishing that level of trust. So the primary focus, at least initially, is on doing that outreach and advocacy and explaining to folks, hey, we're here. Hey, we have these resources that would be beneficial to you. If you're responding to an incident, let us know and we can come and help. And issuing it more in a guidance fashion initially, partnering with those projects. Some of them may already have a security incident response team, or they might have a security focused individual on their maintainer team that this could help augment some of that. But we didn't want to exclude that activity.
I also have a follow up.
If I understand, it's sorry, Randall. What I'm understanding you saying is, like, offer the services, say, here we're a CERT, but then also demonstrate proof of like we're not like, you know, some rando from nowhere. Like we actually know what we're talking about with resources being provided to back up the identity, sort of.
Yep.
if you look at section 2.4 of the plan, we have a model for our community engagement of how work could come to the CERT, whether it's a researcher or an upstream team, and then the different downstream groups we would also work with.
And that what I was
Beautiful
saying, like,
diagram.
that kind of relates to my next question.
Go ahead, Randall.
How important is post incident analysis and learning in your project? And would you be interested in receiving reports and recommendations from the CERT to improve future responses?
That's a really good question. I want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. Is the expectation that a project who has just underwent a major incident, do they contact us after the fact and say, hey, we just dealt with this, how could we make it better? And we review with them how they conducted their activity and provide indicators for improvement areas.
Yep, I actually think I got this one from one of Krobe's videos.
I mean,
From one of
something
his
that would be
many discussions.
something that would actually be like even more potentially useful is just like, I mean, when I first we ran into an incident at a former employer, and we hired an incident responder, and we were like, okay, how do we handle this in the future? And like the guy, as one of the things that he delivered to us, was a run book for if you run into this incident in the future, here are the things that you should do. Like it was Docker related, so it like he's like, here's how you preserve a Docker container's memory so that if it needs to get run, you know, if we need to dump this information by, or if we need to dump memory out of a Docker container, like this is how you preserve it so that like you can do so in the future, you know, stuff like that. Like this is the kind of like run book sort of information that was really helpful for future cases.
I included that in the question. Thanks, Jonathan.
And I have one more question, which is, I think, from our original set of questions.
We actually have an issue about that, Jonathan, under the Vuln Disclosure group. It's issue 113. So at some point, hopefully the work streams will collide and be able to benefit each other. But we said exactly that. We would like to provide maintainers a playbook of what to do, how to handle an incident.
Perfect.
Which this group could participate in or benefit from.
You ready for my last question?
Yep.
Would you prefer the CERT team to focus on proactive or reactive security measures, or a combination of both?
I'm going to answer that immediately because I have an opinion. I feel like a CERT is supposed to be reactive as a primary goal, but then also be, you know, I feel like the OpenSSF in general is designed to be a proactive effect, whereas the CERT is intended to be reactive. So like everything else at the OSSF is the proactive part of it.
Well, so that I agree with that. I think the key value here is how do you take a reactive function and convert those findings, analysis, and activities into proactive initiatives to reduce their occurrence. And that's not something we have written into the scope of the CERT, but I would suspect that having a report of some kind from the CERT to the technical advisory council of like, here's the common requests and things that we're finding, and then have the TAC take action on those would be a good feedback loop that could be amplified.
Absolutely. Yeah. Seeing that like it goes full circle is like that. Yes, I totally agree with that.
We do account for that kind of the periodic reporting to the CERT. It's super vague. And we didn't really commit to what, but we talked about metrics and reporting. And then I lost my actual point. Oh, well.
I think I got your point. Is there is a part of our plan where we hand wave in this general direction, but it's not detailed. It needs to be updated.
3.5. And then 3.6 is establish a postmortem culture. And depending on who's answering the survey, I think you're going to get different results. I
Yeah.
think the maintainers will talk about, I don't have resources, I need help, how can you help me? So I think that'll be reactive. But commercial enterprises are going to say, I need you to tell me all about all this. Tell me. So they're going to want the proactivity.
Yep.
So it's just, we'll have to walk that tightrope.
So I think my recommendation for right now is cleaning up that list of questions, seeing how we could refine it and provide multiple choice or checkbox options, hopefully eliminate any fill in the blank where we can. And then once you get that finalized, figuring out where we need to have deviations for a non-open source focused version of the questionnaire. And then figure out who we're going to send stuff out to.
I got a question potentially. Are there any cases we may not have considered that are good examples of previous incidents that we should use as case studies? Like, what are there already things that are out there that have been published that we can learn from? And like some of the ones that I can think of is like back when Adam Baldwin worked for NPM and before NPM was bought by GitHub, NPM used to publish a lot of instant response things on their blog that were really, really, like, I learned a lot from those. And so, there may be other incidents that are folk that have targeted open source that the community may know about that we may not have considered, that have already been posted about, that we could learn from. Maybe that's not a question to the maintainers, but
So there's always stuff that we don't know. There are blogs and publications about incidents that we could potentially leverage. I think it's a matter of discovery of what those are and which blog posts are good exemplars. I also believe that there are organizations that do an excellent job writing postmortems about incidents that break down actually what happened. However, I haven't really seen a lot of discussion around the process and execution portion of performing a security response. I think that is the part of the conversation that is noticeably absent in a lot of the postmortems.
So we did account for this generally in section 1.1 milestone 5, where we're going to review the existing coordinated vulnerability disclosure media art. So we can definitely add into that if we had specific examples, or have a note, Google open source IR and spend a day reading. So we can definitely add a task to the plan specifically to that.
That would be good.
Emily, where are the notes? I can generate some starter multiple choice answers.
It's actually in the ED.
Notes for today?
The SIRT SIG. Yeah, they're in
Okay,
there.
cool.
There's a whole security questionnaire. Actually, I think I have the ability to tag you, Randall.
Awesome.
So from an execution standpoint, once we're happy with the questions, how do we want to ask this survey? We want to leverage Google form. Do we want to do like a Survey Monkey or something like that? How will we like to execute on the questionnaire?
I love Google Forms, but I have heard a drumbeat of gripes against everything being Google focused because people keep having things blocked by corporate settings against Google.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't have a
Survey
preference,
Monkey,
but Survey Monkey works, and I know what the foundation I think uses Survey Monkey. Maybe I'm mixing up foundations. I know one of them uses Google Forms and Survey Monkey.
No, we had Survey Monkey for the Virtual Maintainer Summit.
Ah, okay, there we go. Yeah, so Survey Monkey should be fine.
Okay. I
Cool.
will take the action to look up how to eventually transfer the finalized questionnaire into Survey Monkey. I used to have an account. I don't know if I do.
Does it need to be in Markdown and in the GitHub code?
No.
No.
I can Control C, Control V with the best of them.
All right.
So should I just like make another document with these questions and add the multiple choice and add the link to the notes?
If you could, maybe we keep all of our notes here in one place. So if you could maybe edit.
Just edit that where it is.
Yeah.
Cool.
or if you have a link, put a comment, or put a link in, whatever.
Well, I just didn't want to, like, if I'm going to add, like, say 3 or 4 multiple choice answers for each one, it's going to get really long.
Oh, our friend Emily, who is awesome, has already added a substantial list of multiple choice options. So you may want to,
Awesome.
you might embellish what the existing art. I don't know.
Yes, I will most definitely do
Most
that.
everything, well, except 11. Most everything has multiple options. Below it has one
Awesome.
option.
Awesome.
Yeah, it should be a lightweight amount of work for you, Randall.
Cool. I appreciate it.
So if we could perhaps have the questionnaire refined by Friday,
I think we can do that.
is next Thursday is the PSIRT call. I can announce it in the governance committee pending on the TAC vote in an hour.
Can I
Okay.
make just an action item for someone to do? I do sometimes make these meetings, sometimes don't. At the end of when this thing is created, can you ping me the list and I will send this, or ping me the questionnaire and I will send it to the GitHub stars, because I have Slack channel. I'm part of the Slack channel there, and so I can share it to those people as well. Yeah. So it's already a collection of a lot of
Sure. Yeah.
critical maintainers. So yeah.
Yeah, we absolutely can. Add that to the notes so I don't forget. All right.
Emily, do you have on the questions the ones that you want check marks or radios or
Any of the ones that were checkbox or listed have in parens checkbox for the most part.
otherwise it's going to be just choose one?
Yeah, it should be fairly obvious which ones are checkbox based off of the amount of sub bullets that they each have.
Fair.
All right, I got to drop for
I
another
haven't
meeting.
checked the notes because I'm
thank you. I really appreciate. Great call today. Very productive. Thank you, Emily, especially. Yay, team.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye all.